when Panzura's engineers had done some statistical research in this, what we basically find is in a typical cross-country case, as we saw before, say they have an established 86 millisecond latency. A file open operation breaks down into about 15,000 operations that, if you take into account all of the time periods that you're waiting 86 milliseconds in between a request and a response, effectively takes 22 minutes to open a file, right? So over 3,000 miles, that's a good distance, but it's an unbearable amount of time that you really can't expect somebody to wait in sort of day-to-day work. And so the solution here is by taking the cloud controller approach, all of the operations become local, always. And we can reduce that file open time, same size file, same sample set, to about 8 seconds, which is a fantastic improvement over the traditional direct WAN operations. When Panzura looked at the Revit sort of application, we took a normal work shared environment, 170 megabyte file with a much shorter latency, because frankly, over an equal latency, you probably just ended up with failures. Still, in a 60 millisecond latency, we're talking roughly northern United States to southern United States, sort of average, or New York to Dallas, or the Midwest. You're talking something in the terms of 15 to 20 minute sync central, where it didn't fail. And this was in a sort of closed scenario. As you start to add users into that, the effects got worse. And what are those effects, right? You've got conflicting Revit local files, deadline weeks that are just riddled with sync central failures, requiring your BIM coordinator to really step up their game and help many people to quickly get that work out. Likewise with the AutoCAD testing, because the sync central in a Panzura enabled environment is always writing locally, we can establish that similar 8-second open time or sync central time between Panzura centrally managed files. As we move through it, how is this achieved? And as we sort of mentioned earlier, local reads and write operations, the predominant factor here. Then as an additional component of that, you had to deal with the contention over those network resources. So Panzura has a proprietary global file locking scenario that essentially lowers latency, but enhances and retains the integrity of that data. Beyond that, we're leveraging the ability to put things into the cloud once, but access to that cloud is done in parallel. So all of those client accesses are happening from the same physical, authoritative copy of the central file, or your CAD content, or your Office documents, for that matter. And then you get as an added benefit the deduplication and compression that the Panzura units implement reduces the required size of cloud storage. So in a comparison where you had a replicated environment in 2 different offices, you're paying for all that disk space. Likewise, you get the ability to eliminate the cost of that private circuit infrastructure, because Panzura can work directly over a standard internet connection. You don't need any dedicated lines. Now, I guess the things to remember here are, adding bandwidth isn't going to fix that problem, because the problem that we're trying to address is one of distance. So we need to have a solution that addresses the distance issue. And what we really need to remember is, ultimately, reduced productivity increases cost. And if there's any reason to invest in a solution, it's ultimately to save money. Time is money. Assuming file open save operations take approximately 5 minutes in a traditional environment, and a user is to say maybe open a file once a day and save maybe once every hour that they're working on it. Without Panzura, that's probably about 7 hours of wasted productivity, and that's costing you, on average, about $500 a day. By simply introducing Panzura, into each of the offices, you could be saving approximately $14,000 a year for every employee that you've got in your environment.